the #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
Good morrow, everyone. This is The Other Side of Midnight on 77 WABC. I'm Frank Morano. Mayor Eric Adams says he's committed to following the law, but based on the internal memos coming out of City Hall, it seems more like he's committed to obstructing the law. The latest? His agencies, I want you to keep in mind as I tell you the story, these agencies, every single one of them are headed by someone appointed by Eric Adams. His agencies are instructing city employees to block access to immigration and customs enforcement officials, even if they show up with a judicial warrant. That's right. Our sanctuary city status is being stretched so far that city staff are told to stand in ICE's way and politely direct officers to wait outside while lawyers review their warrants. Schools, shelters, even courthouses are doubling down on policies that effectively block federal law enforcement from doing their jobs. What's even more troubling is that these directives extend to cases where ICE agents are in hot pursuit of a suspect. Only in situations where someone's life is at risk are city employees instructed to step aside. But even then, there's a clear message. ICE is not welcome here. Let me be clear. This isn't about rounding up innocent people or targeting vulnerable communities. ICE agents showing up with judicial warrants are acting within the boundaries of the law. But New York City is telling its employees to slow walk their access, even at the expense of public safety. This isn't about standing up for immigrant rights. It's about ignoring the rule of law. If Mayor Adams truly believes in addressing the migrant crisis and protecting New Yorkers, this cannot stand. He ought to be making this an issue every single day. Instead, he dodges questions and refuses to call out the absurdity of these policies, which I want to reiterate, are coming from his own administration. Now, here's the kicker. Adams has floated the idea of revisiting our sanctuary city laws, but he's yet to take any real steps to put this to the people. If he's serious about tackling the migrant crisis, there's one obvious move. Put the question of New York City's sanctuary city status on the ballot through his Charter Revision Commission this year. If he doesn't, we'll know exactly where he stands and just how hollow his rhetoric on this crisis really is. Mayor Adams talks a good game about leadership and accountability, but actions speak louder than words. Right now, his actions are saying he's more interested in playing politics than in solving problems. For the sake of New Yorkers and the integrity of our laws, it's time for the mayor to step up, cut through the doublespeak, and lead. If he doesn't, it's time we ask ourselves, who is Eric Adams really working for?
Beam me up!
To be continued.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
Good morrow, everybody. This is The Other Side of Midnight on 77 WABC. I'm Frank Morano. As we watch the devastation unfolding in Los Angeles, entire neighborhoods obliterated by fire, New Yorkers should be asking a sobering question. Are we ready for a disaster like that here? Unfortunately, the answer seems to be a resounding no. Betsy McCoy raised this issue in a recent column in the New York Post. I think it was on Saturday. While her tone was decidedly partisan, her arguments about New York's vulnerabilities are worth serious consideration. The truth is, our city and state leadership seem far too focused on lofty, long-term goals while neglecting the basics of disaster preparedness. Take Governor Kathy Hochul's assurances that New York is tackling wildfires, floods, and storms by moving towards zero emissions. But cutting emissions, while a laudable goal, won't seal a tunnel or fix a broken fire hydrant. After Hurricane Sandy, which many of us lived through, the city installed flood doors to protect tunnels like the Queens Midtown and Brooklyn Battery. But Comptroller Tom DiNapoli has warned those doors are already in disrepair, with broken gaskets that could allow water to pour in. DiNapoli also flagged another glaring issue. The city's evacuation and storm control plans haven't been updated since 2013. Think about that. 11 years without so much as an assessment of whether these plans would still work if a major storm hit tomorrow. Meanwhile, heavy equipment for storm control isn't ready, and staffing shortages across essential services like the NYPD, EMS, and fire departments only compound the problem. EMS workers, for example, are paid an insulting $18.99 an hour to respond to life-and-death emergencies. No wonder ambulances are taking longer to arrive. Orrin Barzelli, head of the EMS union, said it best. City leaders are more concerned with trendy causes like diversity, equity, and inclusion than with making sure the people responding to emergencies are properly compensated and equipped. Even smaller-scale disasters have shown how unprepared we are. Last summer, when smoke from Canadian wildfires blanketed the city, sending people with respiratory issues to the ER, Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Hochul were caught flat-footed. They knew the smoke was coming, but failed to take basic steps to prepare the public. Here's the bottom line. Disaster preparedness isn't glamorous, but it's absolutely essential. It's about flood doors, fire hydrants, working equipment, and fully staffed emergency services. It's about making sure that when the unthinkable happens, people can trust their government to respond. We don't need panic or partisanship. We need action. New Yorkers deserve a city that's ready for anything, not just in theory, but in practice.
Beam me up!
To be continued.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
New Yorkers, we've got a story out of the boogie down Bronx that should give everyone in this city pause. An ex-convict named Liliana Traficante, who spent over 3 years in federal prison for defrauding investors of more than $1 million, is running for a seat on the New York City Council. Yes, you heard that right. A woman who concocted a sham water park scheme to scam foster children is now asking the people of District 13 in the Bronx to send her to City Hall. Traficante pled guilty to felony wire fraud conspiracy and was ordered to pay $750,000 in restitution. To date, she's paid back only $118. Yet she claims that her time in prison makes her better suited to represent her community. If you've lived the problem, she says, you're better suited to solve it. It's an interesting argument, but it raises a critical question. What does it say about the current crop of city council members that someone like this feels at home joining them? Let me be clear. I'm not against redemption. If you've served your time and paid your debt to society, you deserve a second chance. But public office isn't just any second chance. It's an enormous responsibility. It's about managing taxpayer money, making laws, and setting an example for the community. How can someone who defrauded people of over $1 million and hasn't paid back the court-ordered restitution, how could someone like that be trusted with those duties? Here's what makes this even more concerning. The seat she's vying for is currently held by Christy Morano, a freshman Republican who's been doing an excellent job for her district. Morano has fought hard to address local concerns, and the last thing the Bronx needs is for someone like Trafficante to undermine her good work. But here's the twist. Even if Trafficante were to win the election, she wouldn't be allowed to serve. A 2021 law prohibits people convicted of fraud or public corruption felonies from holding office in New York City. This law, however, is being challenged in court, meaning the situation could get even murkier. Look, I fully believe New Yorkers should have the right to vote for whomever they want. And I actually do think that law is probably unconstitutional. But what does it say about our city's political climate that someone with this kind of criminal history feels emboldened to run for office? Is it a sign that standards for public service have slipped, or that our city's leaders haven't done enough to inspire public trust? This race should serve as a wake-up call. Voters in District 13 and across the city need to think carefully about who they're sending to City Hall. Public service is an honor, not a fallback plan for those who failed to meet even the most basic standards of integrity. The Bronx deserves better, New York City deserves better, and it's up to all of us to demand it. I'll be interested to see where this election goes.
Beam me up!
To be continued.
Tell Me What Happened is a show that asks, what would you do if you saw someone in danger?
I'm not making it out of this river. I'm never going to see my mom again. I'm never going to see my sister again.
Would you jump to their rescue? Or hope someone else does?
I couldn't see her head above the water. All I could see was her hair. If she was alive, she didn't have very long.
These are true stories of people that chose to help a stranger who was in trouble. Listen today to Tell Me What Happened, an original podcast by OnStar.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
It's been 3 years since the devastating fire at the Twin Parks apartment complex in the Bronx. 17 lives were lost, dozens of families were displaced, and an entire community was left grappling with unimaginable loss. In the immediate aftermath, the Bronx Community Foundation stepped in, launching a fundraising effort that raised nearly $400,000 for the victims. The money poured in from generous people who wanted to help. But now, almost all of that money, over $389,000, is still sitting in a bank account. Meanwhile, the families who lost loved ones, homes, and everything they owned are still waiting. The foundation's response? Vague statements, internal turmoil, and a complete lack of transparency. They've spent less than $60,000 over 2 years with no clear explanation of how those funds were used. The rest? It remains untouched. When pressed for answers, the foundation declined to comment, and key local politicians who initially promoted the fundraising effort offered little more than shrugs. This isn't just a case of mismanagement. It's a betrayal. People gave their money with the best of intentions, trusting that it would go to the victims who needed it most. Instead, it's another glaring example of how nonprofits in New York too often fail the communities they claim to serve. Let's be clear. There are nonprofits in this city that do incredible, life-changing work. But stories like this are far too common. Money raised in the name of tragedy and human suffering gets tied up in bureaucracy, mismanagement, or worse. And the people it's meant for? They're left to fend for themselves. The Gambian Youth Organization, a smaller group also involved in fire relief, raised over $1 million after the Twin Parks fire and spent $680,000 directly helping victims within the first year. That's how it should work. Yet the Bronx Community Foundation, which is far more connected politically, can't seem to get its act together. We need radical oversight of how nonprofits in New York operate. Too often, they're shielded from scrutiny and their donors are left in the dark. Where is the money going? How is it being spent? These are basic questions, and yet they're met with silence or confusion. New Yorkers deserve better, and the victims of the Twin Parks fire, still waiting for the help they were promised, deserve justice. Until we hold these organizations accountable, until we demand full transparency and real oversight, these heartbreaking stories will keep repeating themselves. Let's not allow this to become just another chapter in the sad saga of nonprofit mismanagement. To be continued.